Welcome back, boys and girls, to Virtual Victory Sports Basketball Camp. I'm Coach Joel. Really excited to have you here today for another fun day of basketball camp, even if it's virtual. So before we get into it, we've got to get our muscles nice and warmed up. And today we're actually going to do a warm-up that you've done before. You need 15 feet of space. I've got my black lines right here showing my 15 feet of space. We're going to do high knees, bottom kickers, and jumping jacks again. Here we go. I feel nice and warmed up. I hope you do too. Let's get into our skill and drill time. Meet me right back here. You actually don't even need a ball today, but if you've got some cones, water bottles, or cups, snag those and we'll meet right back here for skill and drill time. All right, boys and girls, it's time for skill and drill time. And today, the skill we're gonna focus on is everybody's favorite part of any sport: defense. That's right. I love defense. I'm super excited for today. So before we get into our drill part, first I just want to show you a really proper defensive stance. Now, as you know, defense is when we're guarding the team that has the ball and we don't want them to score. So when I'm guarding someone, I want to make sure that I'm nice and low and nice and athletic, which means that I'm going to spread my feet apart so that they're comfortable, and then I'm going to pretend that there's an imaginary chair behind me that I'm going to sit back into, just like that. I'm going to sit in my chair just like this. Stay up on your toes a little bit, because if you get back on your heels, you might fall over. Sitting in my chair, on my toes, I'm going to try to keep my chest up, because if you bend over and put your chest down like this, you're going to end up like me with a really bad back, and it's hard to move around if you've got your chest down. So bend those knees, keep that chest up. The last part is you want your hands out and active. God gave you 2 arms and 2 hands. You should use them when you're playing defense. Don't put them down by the side like this. Don't put them behind you. You want them up and active, making yourself look a little bit bigger. Right? You can grab the ball, maybe steal the ball. This is a perfect defensive stance. All right, now that we've got our defensive stance, we've got to talk a little bit about how to move when we're in that stance. So when you're down in your good defensive stance, you actually never want to turn and run. You want to slide your feet where you go. Slide your feet. Now, very important, sliding is not galloping like a horse, and sliding is not crossing your feet like a ballerina. You want to stay in your stance and slide just like this. Nice little slides, staying in your stance, keeping your chest up, keeping your legs bent, keeping your arms out. You want to slide when you play defense. The other thing that I want to talk about is, let's pretend that my person doesn't have the basketball right now and I'm guarding them. As soon as they get the basketball, how do I want to get to them? Do I want to, let's pretend that this person, this cone, is an imaginary person with the ball. Do I want to run out to them as hard as I can and jump like crazy? Absolutely not. Do I want to slide all the way to them? Probably not, because they already have the ball. We got to get there fast. So if that cone has the basketball and I'm over here, I'm actually going to run and then chop my feet like this to slow me down and get me ready to play defense. It looks a little bit like this. Ball goes to that cone, I run, chop my feet and raise my hands, and then get into a good defensive stance. I'll do it full speed this time. I'm standing over here, ball goes there, just like that. That way you slow down without going crazy, and you come right into good defensive stance. Remember, when you close out, you want to keep those hands nice and high until you get into your defensive stance. All right, now that we know what good defensive stance looks like, we've got to talk a little bit about how to move while we're in good defensive stance. Because when you're in a good defensive stance, you don't want to turn and run around. You don't want to jump around like this. You want to make sure you are sliding your feet. So I'm in a good defensive stance. I'm going to slide my feet. Nice and easy, just like that. When you're sliding, you don't want to gallop like a horse. That's not quite a slide. And you don't want to cross your feet like a ballerina. You want to stay in your stance, step, slide, step, slide, step, slide. So for this drill, it's really easy. All you need is your 15 feet of space, and I put 2 cones up to help me a little bit. And I'm going to start at 1 cone, and I'm just going to slide to the next cone. Really slow, really easy. Step, slide, step, slide. Staying in my defensive position the whole time, sliding my feet. I'm going to touch the cone and turn and go the other way. Step, slide, step, slide. Just like that. Once you feel more and more comfortable that you have the step slides down, then you can try to go faster and faster. Like that. The best way to do this drill is to try to either time yourself and see how many times you can touch a cone in maybe 30 seconds or 45 seconds. But you want to make sure you're never galloping or crossing your feet. You've got to slide the whole time. So here's what I want. I want you to get to your cones, and I want you to do 6 cone touches as fast as you can. I'll go with you. Ready? That is sliding, cone sliding, a really good way to practice sliding and staying in good defensive position. All right, now that we know how to move when we're playing defense and how to close out when we're playing defense, it's time for our drill. It's a really simple drill. All you need is those 3 cones, water bottles or cups that you brought earlier, and you're gonna set them up in a really big triangle, a really big one, maybe 15 feet between every single cone. And you're gonna start at one of the bottom cones. All you do in this drill is when you're coming to the top cone, you've got to run, but when you're going to a bottom cone, you've got to slide. Does that make sense? When you come to a top cone, you've got to run. When you go to a bottom cone, you got to slide. So I want you to think about what I was just showing you earlier. I'm going to run from this cone, and I'm going to close out, chop my feet, get into defensive stance, and then I'm going to slide to that cone, touch this cone, and do the same thing. Run, chop my feet, slide to this cone. You've got to touch both of the bottom cones 2 times each, so 4 times total. Ready? Let's watch. I'll show you how to do it, and then it's your turn. That is a really, really good way to practice a whole bunch of different parts of defense. Sliding your feet, closing out, staying low in your stance. Triangle closeouts is what we call this. Triangle closeouts are a really, really good way for you to become the best defender that you can. All right, now that we know what good defensive stance looks like, we've got to talk a little bit about how to move while we're in good defensive stance. Because when you're in a good defensive stance, you don't want to turn and run around. You don't want to jump around like this. You want to make sure you are sliding your feet. So I'm in a good defensive stance. I'm going to slide my feet. Nice and easy, just like that. When you're sliding, you don't want to gallop like a horse. That's not quite a slide. And you don't want to cross your feet like a ballerina. You want to stay in your stance, step, slide, step, slide, step, slide. So for this drill, really easy. All you need is your 15 feet of space, and I put 2 cones up to help me a little bit. And I'm going to start at 1 cone, and I'm just going to slide to the next cone. Really slow, really easy. Step, slide, step, slide. Staying in my defensive position the whole time, sliding my feet. I'm going to touch the cone and turn and go the other way. Step, slide, step, slide. Just like that. Once you feel more and more comfortable that you have the step slides down, then you can try to go faster and faster. Like that. The best way to do this drill is to try to either time yourself and see how many times you can touch a cone in maybe 30 seconds or 45 seconds. But you want to make sure you're never galloping or crossing your feet. You've got to slide the whole time. So here's what I want. I want you to get to your cones, and I want you to do 6 cone touches as fast as you can. I'll go with you. Ready? That is sliding, cone sliding, a really good way to practice sliding and staying in good defensive position. Welcome to Challenge Time, boys and girls. I'm super excited that we have a chance to rest, relax, drink a little bit of water maybe, and learn a little bit more about God, following God, and what that looks like for us. Yesterday we talked about Queen Esther, one of my all-time favorite stories in the Bible, and how following God gave Esther the courage to say the truth even when it was hard and even when she might get in trouble for doing it. Today we're going to talk about a story that maybe you've heard before. This is a great story in the Old Testament about a man named Joseph. Now if you've heard the story, great, keep listening though, because maybe you'll get something out of it that you haven't heard before. But before we get to the story of Joseph, I want to give you guys the key point or the main theme of today's story. And that is, following God will give us the courage to forgive others. Following God will give us the courage to forgive others, even when it's hard. I don't know about you, but I think it's really hard to forgive people when they've done wrong things to me. And in our story today, it's going to be really hard for Joseph to forgive some people. So the story begins with Joseph and his house. Now Joseph lived with his dad, his mom, and a bunch of his brothers. Joseph had a ton of brothers. And they were all getting along really well. They were having fun, they were playing around, maybe they were doing work and then going to the pool. Who knows what they were doing. But what happened was Joseph's dad gave him a special coat, a special jacket. And he only gave it to Joseph. He didn't give it to anybody else. He didn't give it anything else to any of the brothers. Well, his brothers didn't like that very much. They became pretty jealous of that. So they got together and they hatched a plan. It was a pretty bad, pretty sad plan. And that plan was that when Joseph fell asleep, they were going to beat him up, take his jacket away. And not only that, but they also sold him into slavery. They sold him to an Egyptian that was going to take him to be a slave in Egypt, which was miles and miles and miles away. So that's what they did. They beat him up, they stole his jacket, and they sold him into slavery. Now already, Joseph hasn't done anything wrong. Already, Joseph has been beaten up, had his jacket stolen, and sold into slavery, and he hasn't done anything wrong. Well, it just gets worse for Joseph, I'm afraid. So he starts working for this man named Potiphar. And Potiphar really liked Joseph. Joseph was doing great work for Potiphar, and he was so good at his work that Potiphar made him head of the household. He was the head slave. So he was in charge of all the other slaves and in charge of everything that happened at the house. Well, unfortunately, something bad happened to Joseph. He was accused of something that he didn't do. Somebody lied about Joseph and said he did something wrong, even though he didn't do anything wrong. And Potiphar was furious. Potiphar was so mad that he had Joseph thrown in jail. So now, not only is Joseph away from his family, away from the people he loves, he's not even a slave anymore. He's in prison. He's stuck in jail. But instead of complaining and whining and feeling sorry for himself, Joseph just continues to follow God and to love God. And what that leads to is that God actually gives Joseph this very special gift. And God allows Joseph to interpret dreams. So there's a couple other prisoners that started having these crazy dreams. And God gave Joseph the knowledge to tell these prisoners, well, this is what your dream really means. And Joseph was right every single time. So one of those prisoners was a cupbearer. He would bring the cup to the Pharaoh, who was like the king in charge of all of Egypt. He would bring the cup to Pharaoh when Pharaoh needed a drink. Well, that guy was in prison, and he had these dreams, and Joseph told him what those dreams meant. Well, when it was time for the cupbearer to be released from prison, he went back to his work, bringing the cup to the Pharaoh. And then all of a sudden, something strange happened. The Pharaoh started having these really peculiar, interesting dreams. And these dreams were not letting him sleep, and he was worried, and he didn't know what to do about it. And he kept talking and talking about it, and he kept asking people what he should do. And the cupbearer overheard the Pharaoh talking to some other men about these dreams he was having. And the cupbearer remembered, oh, I know somebody that can interpret these dreams. So the cupbearer told Pharaoh, and Pharaoh said, all right, we'll bring him here. So they went down, they got Joseph out of prison, and they brought him before the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh told Joseph his dream. And right away, Joseph knew exactly what Pharaoh's dream meant because God told him what it meant. So the Pharaoh said, well, hang on, I got to keep you around here. We can't lose you. You're not going back to prison. You're staying with me in case I have any more dreams. So Joseph hung around Pharaoh and the kingdom, and he just kept doing more and more good work, more and more good things for the Pharaoh, until finally the Pharaoh actually made Joseph the second in command of all of Egypt. It would be like if Joseph was made the vice president of the United States. It was crazy. So Joseph went just from a normal boy to beaten up, had his jacket stolen, sold into slavery, to a slave to Potiphar's head slave, to a prisoner. Now he was the second in command of all of Egypt. Well, what actually ended up happening was there was a big famine, which means that they were running out of food all over the place, all over the earth. They were running out of food. And so people would come to Egypt, because Egypt was this big grand city, to ask for more food and to get more food, to pay for more food. And guess who came to ask for some food? Joseph's brothers and Joseph's family. Well, Joseph was the second in command, so he was actually in charge of who got what food and giving out the food. So all of Joseph's family, all of his brothers come, and they're asking for food, and they're asking Joseph for food, but they don't recognize him. It had been so long that they didn't even know that they were talking to Joseph. But Joseph recognized them right away. And not only did Joseph give them food, but he actually told them, you guys, I'm Joseph. I'm your brother. I'm the one that you beat up and sold into slavery. And they were so ashamed. They were so sad, and they ran to Joseph's feet and begged for his forgiveness. And Joseph picked them up, and he gave them their food, and he said, you know what? Not only am I going to give you guys food, but I'm just going to invite you to come live with me in Egypt. That way you don't even have to ask for more food. You'll just have it. And I forgive you, because I follow God and I love God, and God forgives you, so I forgive you. That is a crazy, crazy hard thing to do, to forgive someone that does something wrong to you, especially something as wrong as that. I've never had something that bad happen to me. I don't know if I'd be able to forgive those people. But Joseph followed God, and Joseph loved God, and God gave the courage Joseph needed to forgive his brothers. I'm going to try every single day to be like Joseph, to follow God and have the courage to forgive others when they do wrong things to me. I hope you do too. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for another amazing day, Lord. Amazing day of basketball, another amazing story from your Bible, Lord, that talks about following you and what that looks like, Lord, and how following you can give us the courage to forgive others. Lord, and that's so hard. I pray that you help me to forgive others when they wrong me, just like Joseph did. We love you, Lord. In your name, amen. Thanks for listening to that story. Another great one. If you want more on that story, you can go back to the Old Testament and check it out. All right, let's get back to some basketball. All right, boys and girls, you know what time it is. It is time to challenge Coach Joel. And I think that today we've probably had enough defense, so we're gonna go back and do one of my all-time favorite shooting games or drills called Beat the Pro. So today, you're actually not really challenging me, you're kind of challenging an imaginary pro. Here's how the game works. You've got to score 5 points. You get 1 point for every single shot that you make. Here's the trick though. The pro, imaginary pro, gets 1 point for every single shot that you miss. So it's the first 1 to 5, and let's see if you can do it. My turn, I'm gonna start out, see if I can beat the pro. I beat the pro 5-2. I made 5 shots and only missed 2. I won today's challenge. I think you can do it too. Beat the pro, first 1 to 5. You make it, you get 1. You miss it, the pro gets 1. Thanks for coming today. Absolutely loved getting to hang out with you. Can't wait to see you in real life soon. In the meantime, stay safe. Love you guys.